It's Tuesday, June 21st, and this is now on H&N.
They don't have those reserves right now.
Southwest pilots picket, saying they're tired of being understaffed and overworked.
Police arrest a woman accused of stabbing her ex-boyfriend multiple times in Waikiki.
The House January 6th committee says former President Trump and those in his inner circle leaned on state officials in an attempt to overturn the 2020 election. I'm Skyler Henry on Capitol Hill with more from the panel's fourth public hearing.
Let's go on a moonlight swim.
Blue Hawaii is back and looking better than ever. Plus, we've got a preview of the new Elvis biopic. That's coming up on This Is Now. Let's get started with this breaking news. A portion of the runway at Kona International Airport had to be shut down for a short time this morning, and several flights were diverted after a general aviation plane experienced landing failure this morning. That's according to state officials. The State Department of Transportation said it happened around 9 a.m. this morning, and the plane suffered a collapsed landing gear while landing at the airport. The lone pilot is said to be unhurt. The airport remained open to commercial flights, and we're told that portion of the runway, again, that had to be shut down is now completely reopened. Be looking for more updates on this story coming up on later editions of Hawaii News Now, and keep checking those H&N digital platforms.
Aloha and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for watching This Is Now. You got Jonathan and Ashley here. Now, today is the first official day of summer, and the nation's airlines already appear to be overwhelmed. This is a live look at Honolulu's airport, where at last check, there have been 2 cancellations and 27 delays so far. Now, CBS News travel advisor Peter Greenberg has more on the ongoing travel troubles.
Well, it's a bad situation and it's about to get worse. We're dealing with overscheduled airlines, understaffed TSA, and of course, rising travel demand. That's a recipe for a system meltdown before I even throw in the possibility of weather.
Thousands of flights were canceled in the U.S. over the Juneteenth holiday weekend. Since the start of June, U.S. airports have seen an average of 2.2 million flyers every day, and airline executives are now being warned to stick to their flight schedules or face the fines.
So the advice is simply this: if you're going to get to the airport, get the first flight of the day. Try to make it on an airline where the crew is going to overnight on that flight that came in the night before. You have a very good chance then that crew will stay with the plane and will go out with you the next morning. Then, if you're making a connecting flight, give yourself at least 2 to 2.5 hours, because if your first flight is late, the second flight may lose it. And if you miss that second flight, even though the airline want to put you on a third flight, it may not be available because the airlines have still reduced flights, and those flights are already full.
And check out this new video. Hundreds of pilots that work for Southwest Airlines are hitting the picket line in Dallas at Love Field. They're demanding a new union contract with higher pay and better working conditions. The ongoing pilot shortage has forced pilots like these to have changing schedules and work on their days off. Here's Peter Greenberg's advice on combating the staffing shortages.
Well, this actually predates the pandemic. Airlines always have a problem getting enough crew the last 10 days of the month, simply because you either have flight attendants and pilots who've flown their maximum number of hours and can't legally fly anymore, or you have flight crew that flew their minimum number of hours and don't want to fly anymore. In the old days, they had a lot of reserve pilots and flight attendants. They don't have those reserves right now. So the last 10 days of the month is a real challenge for airlines trying to field the right number of crew to put on those flights. So try to do the first 2 weeks if you can.
We have these new details to pass along regarding that overnight stabbing in Waikiki. Police say the suspect is a woman accused of attacking her ex-boyfriend with a knife. This happened around 1 a.m. on Ohua Avenue. First responders say the 51-year-old man was stabbed multiple times. He has been hospitalized in serious condition. The suspect, 31-year-old Sally Tiana Tuifa'o, was arrested shortly after. She faces assault charges.
Alden Bunag, the Oahu teacher charged with distributing child pornography, will be held at the Federal Detention Center until at least July because he is considered a flight risk with family in the Philippines. Bunag allegedly confessed that he recorded himself having sex with a 13-year-old boy and sent that video to a man in Pennsylvania, which indicated they were allegedly trading child pornography. The Department of Education says the 34-year-old has worked with the department in various positions since 2012. He was a part-time teacher at Ilima Intermediate in 2016 and 17. He was a substitute in the Leeward Oahu district for several years, and he most recently worked at Pearl City High School. A check of the state court records shows no prior convictions, only traffic infractions. New details are coming to light in the Uvalde school shooting. Jay Gray brings us this update.
I'd like to observe a moment of silence.
A silence broken
11:31, the suspect begins shooting at the school.
by a stunning review of the timeline in the deadly attack.
3 minutes after the subject entered the West Building, there was sufficient number of armed officers wearing body armor to isolate, distract, and neutralize the subject.
3 minutes in, 9 officers with pistols and rifles gathered in the school hallway. This still image from surveillance video appears to show multiple officers with weapons and a ballistic shield huddled together 19 minutes after the killing spree began, still waiting outside classrooms as shots were being fired.
1 hour, 14 minutes, and 8 seconds. That's how long the children waited and the teachers waited in rooms 111 to be rescued.
The director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, during hours of testimony to state senators, outlining a response he describes as an abject failure.
Terrible decisions were made by the on-scene commander and should have never happened, plain and simple.
That on-scene commander, Uvalde School Police Chief Pete Arredondo, repeatedly telling officers to wait on more backup, weapons, shields, and keys to classrooms that were already unlocked as the attack played out. Arredondo has refused to speak publicly about the investigation into his department's actions. Members of a separate House committee did question the chief behind closed doors today in Austin. Jay Gray, NBC News.
Hawaii's Congress members say defueling the Navy's Red Hill tanks will likely be pushed back about a year, and that process could begin in the fall of 2024, and that is if all goes well.
To look at a level of time, that's what we're looking at. Now, the one question I would have is the 100+ million gallons of fuel currently sitting in about a dozen tanks up there right now that hasn't moved since the 20th of December, is it safe? Are those tanks structurally sound? Are they not leaking? And can we guarantee that those tanks can stay that way for the next year and a half, potentially almost 2 years, before we actually commence defueling?
The Navy's plans to defuel those tanks is due on June 30th, but congressional leaders say it will still need to be approved by the state's health department. What will follow is likely a long process of bidding contracts, approving funding, and eventually draining and dismantling the tanks. Board of Water Supply's Chief Engineer Ernie Lau says they're still waiting on the Navy's investigation report into the aquifer.
I think it's important that they have this opportunity to demonstrate action consistent with their words, that they follow through.
Now, Congress has allocated $1.1 billion to address drinking water contamination, help displaced families, and advance future water treatment and distribution projects. This just in, stocks are ending higher today on Wall Street, clawing back from some of the ground they lost last week and the worst weekly drop since the beginning of the pandemic. The S&P 500 rose 2.4%. It's still 21.5% below the record high set in January. The tech-heavy NASDAQ climbed 2.5%, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average is adding 2.1%.
Commuters across the UK have struggled to get to work as the country faces its biggest rail strikes in decades. In the capital, Transport for London warned people not to travel today, tweeting, "If you have to travel, finish your tube or rail journey by 6 p.m. National rail strikes are also planned for Thursday and Saturday. Scott McLean has more from London Bridge Station.
Well, the UK has returned to relative normality for a long time now, but this week it is feeling a lot like a day at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Just a trickle of people coming through London Bridge Station, one of the busiest stations in the entire United Kingdom. Most of the platforms closed off because only 20% or so of trains across all of England, Scotland, and Wales are actually running because of the biggest rail strike in the UK in the last 30 years. We've been talking to people here, and many who have managed to make it to central London say they're finding it difficult, sometimes impossible, to make it to their final destinations elsewhere in the city, because this is also impacting the London Underground, the tube system, in a city where most people don't actually have a car. What I found striking, though, is that most people have a lot of sympathy for these striking workers. The question, though, is how long will that sympathy last?
All right, back out here live in the H&N Digital Center. We want to take you live now to Washington, D.C., where it is now 6 o'clock their time on the East Coast. All eyes on that fourth day of the hearing there into the January 6th attacks. We got Skylar Henry standing by at Capitol Hill, with where the focus has now turned to local elections officials.
Tuesday, the House January 6th committee argued former President Donald Trump and top aides pushed officials in key states to overturn the election in his favor, despite warnings it could lead to violence.
The president's supporters heard the former president's claims of fraud and the false allegations he made against state and local officials as a call to action.
One gentleman that had the 3 bars on his chest, and he had a pistol.
Arizona State House Speaker Rusty Bowers faced threats after he resisted pressure from Mr. Trump and his attorney at the time, Rudy Giuliani, to replace Arizona's electors. Bowers recalled this exchange with Giuliani.
He said, "We've got lots of theories, we just don't have the evidence."
Also testifying were Georgia's top election officials Gabriel Sterling and Brad Raffensperger, who received that now infamous phone call where the former president asked for additional votes to win the state.
We just followed the law and we followed the Constitution. And at the end of the day, President Trump came up short.
A 2020 Georgia election worker said she and her family were physically accosted and faced death threats after Mr. Trump and Giuliani made false accusations about a scheme involving a ballot.
Wishing death upon me, saying things like, "Be glad it's 2020 and not 1920.
During Tuesday's hearing, the committee also publicly ramped up scrutiny on the actions of some of their Republican colleagues.
What did Mr. Biggs ask you to do?
He asked if I would sign on both to a letter that had been sent from my state and or that I would support the decertification of the electors, and I said I would not.
British filmmaker Alex Holder now says he has complied with the committee subpoena to overturn exclusive footage and interviews with the former president and his inner circle in the days before and after January 6th. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
All right, thanks, Skylar, for that update. We'll keep updating you on everything that happens there at Capitol Hill this week right here on This Is Now. All right, what do you say we take a live picture out at the beautiful skyline of Pittsburgh? Yeah, get this, Ash. It's 91 degrees there.
Oh, yuck.
It's hotter there than it is here any place on the islands. Let's see how those conditions are going to shape up. Here is Guy Hoggy with that update.
We're not expecting a washout in terms of rainfall, although we will see some windward and Malka showers for the duration of the forecast. Really not a whole lot of rain. And remember, this is all light rainfall, if any at all. This could even represent lower level clouds, and you can see it's light on the scale, and that's going to be the case for the next several days. So we're going to have lots of sunshine, too, over the next several days. So the start of summer, the first week of summer, is looking fantastic if you like sunshine and beautiful weather, right? If you like fall weather, forget about it. We're not going to see anything like that. However, with those breezy trade-ins through Thursday, there will likely be some overnight and early morning showers, mainly for windward neighborhoods, not a whole lot for leeward sides. And then starting on Friday, the winds back down. They slow down, and they'll be running slow through Sunday. And that means during the Friday-Sunday time frame, humidity levels will be climbing. It's going to be a little sticky this weekend. So load up on the sunblock, drink a lot of water, but get outside and enjoy the best weather on the planet.
Well, there's this company in California's Silicon Valley that believes the future of solar energy is clear. John Ramus has more on that.
At the headquarters of Ubiquitous Energy near San Francisco, the familiar black solar panels on the roof are pretty obvious. But the lights in the company conference room are being powered by the windows, which are also acting as solar collectors.
And so that's kind of the problem we sought out to solve with our technology is how can you make a solar technology that's completely invisible, and by making it invisible, now we can apply it to many more surfaces.
Co-founder Miles Barr says his company has invented an invisible coating using photosensitive dyes that capture energy from only the non-visible infrared and ultraviolet spectrums, turning windows into see-through solar panels.
So you can use the full surface, the full vertical surface of a glass skyscraper to generate electricity that can be used by the building.
Other companies are working on similar technology. Next Energy just released a prototype window with a transparent coating that can harness solar energy. Ubiquitous already has its windows on several buildings, and the company is now gearing up for full-scale production in 2024.
We're talking about you're buying a window, and now do you want to pay a little bit more so that your window produces electricity as well?
Ubiquitous CEO Susan Stone says there may be more uses down the road. Theoretically, the same coating could be applied to any hard or painted surface, allowing electronic devices and even parked cars to charge themselves.
If builders start using the windows, the energy possibilities could be staggering.
Every year, more than 20 billion square feet of window glass is installed around the world, enough to circle the Earth 100 times.
John Ramus, CBS News, San Francisco.
We're learning more about a local airline's plan to add new electric sea gliders to its fleet. Casey Lund filed this report from Honolulu's airport.
Good afternoon. This really has the opportunity to revolutionize the way we travel inter-island and intra-island, meaning if you're going from the south shore of Oahu to the north shore, you could do that on one of these sea gliders. Now, these are being used with Mokulele Airlines and Pacific Current. They're a subsidiary of Hawaiian Electric Industries, but the developer of the plane, Regent, is also here with us. I want to introduce Mike Klinker, and I want to talk a little bit about the Seacraft. Excuse me, it's not an airplane, right? It's a high-speed maritime vehicle because it's technically not a plane, meaning that you don't have to go through security, do all that stuff that you do when you fly a normal aircraft. I want to talk a little bit about the craft, though, and how it would compare to, say, a flight, an inter-island flight, speed-wise and ride-wise.
Sure, absolutely. So thank you so much for having us on today. We're so excited about the positive response we've had from talking about the Sea Glider and how its application could be used here in Hawaii. The typical passenger experience we're looking towards is, imagine it's similar to a ferry where you could go down to a dock near a city center or here at the airport. Imagine not having to go in the airport lines, go through the whole TSA process of taking off your shoes, waiting in the terminal. Imagine a much faster means to get from here to Oahu over to Maui or inter-island or intra-island.
I love that, and I think it's safe to assume if you're closer to the water, right, it might be a little safer because it's they already land on the water. I have a question, though, about a high surf, say really choppy waters. Are these still able to operate safely?
Absolutely. So part of the feasibility study we're doing right now is trying to understand how the wind and the waves here around the island chain will affect the operations. The vehicle will be safe enough to operate in high surf conditions, and imagine you're flying 30 feet above the surface of the water, whether it's a completely calm flat surface or in choppy sea scenario.
Might even get to see some marine life. Last question before we go. I just wanted to ask about the timeline. I know that so much has gone into even just the thought and idea of bringing this to the islands, and I know we still have a lot to do before the infrastructure is set up. What is kind of the timeline?
We're looking to the early rollout to be in 2025. And a lot of the work we're doing now and we've been doing for the past year is trying to understand where those potential routes could be and how we can make the most impact for the residents here in Hawaii.
Very good. Mike Klinker with us from Regent, the developer of the aircraft, again, Pacific Current and Mokulele Airlines. They're partners trying to bring this to the state of Hawaii to really change the way we move about the islands. For now, we'll send things back to you.
Looking cool.
Yeah.
I would do it.
I would try it.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's see what else the interweb is talking about today. And have you heard about this floating city yet? Yes. A lot of people are getting really creative, and a lot of countries are getting creative with how you deal with sea level rise. This is the Maldives, and check this out. They're building this floating city. It can hold enough space for 20,000 people. These modular units are constructed at a local shipyard, then towed to the floating city. Right there, you see this beautiful design. Once in the position, they are attached to a large underwater concrete hull, which is screwed to a sort of the seabed and the steel stilts that can still move and gently fluctuate with the waves. Coral reefs that surround the city help provide a natural wave breaker to stabilize that house and keep residents from feeling seasick.
Interesting.
Yeah, very cool. I heard they go for like 150 to 200,000. Yep.
Oh, okay.
They're small. Studio, one bedroom.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, something that's not floating, you guys. Hong Kong's famous jumbo floating restaurant capsized after encountering adverse conditions in the South China Sea. Now, no crew members were injured. The vessel, which resembled a Chinese imperial palace, has welcomed celebrities such as Queen Elizabeth and Tom Cruise with Cantonese cuisine since 1976. Now, in 2020, it ceased operations because of the pandemic. After months of COVID-19 restrictions, its parent company was just unable to find a new owner and lacked the funds to maintain it.
It's really sad.
Yeah, but check this out. Paramount is releasing a newly restored version of the 1961 Elvis Presley movie, Blue Hawaii. So Elvis plays Chad Gates, who is fresh out of the army and defying his parents by working as a tour guide instead of going into the family business. Now, the film arrives in Ultra 4K, HD, and digital today.
Love those outfits they're wearing too.
Oh,
Some
yeah.
retro
Cocoa
aloha.
Palms there.
Oh yeah, that's where that's filmed. You know that. All right, we're still talking Elvis here, and there's that new movie that's coming out very soon. Everyone's talking about it. Rick Damigella has a preview of just that.
Come back, baby, on well, listen, I'll tell you, baby, what I'm talking about.
Austin Butler channels the king of rock and roll in Baz Luhrmann's Elvis.
Come back, baby, come.
Butler put extensive effort into creating his performance.
It was a little over 2 years. It was something as an actor of an intense fascination with this man who was just a little kid who came from nothing, who then becomes the most famous person in the world.
Action! My whole mission is to get something out there that people all want to come to the theater and commune together. Now, I could not have made this movie. I said I wouldn't if I didn't find somebody to play Elvis, and I honestly didn't think I would. The way that Austin came to me, the way that he was found in the role, I can tell you one thing. For 2 years, day and night, and in his sleep, he was Elvis.
He was my destiny.
I wish to promote you, Mr. Presley.
Tom Hanks transforms himself into Presley's Svengali, Colonel Tom Parker.
I mean, Tom is he's just the best. He really surpassed every idea that I had about him. He was so kind. He's such a great leader on set. Like, everybody around him, he just lifts the morale.
In Hollywood, I'm Rick Damigella.
Well, he certainly got the voice down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I am excited about that movie. I think it's at the end of this month that it's released. So
right.
a lot of people waiting.
Biopics.
Yep, and a lot of connections to Hawaii. We'll wait and see if there's any sort of cameos of Hawaii locations.
Oh, yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for This Is Now. Keep checking your H&N digital platforms for update on all the news that's developing throughout the day. We'll have the latest on that Kona airport incident posted right now on those digital platforms. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
See ya.